What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters, and welcome to No Life to Metal. Going to be doing another thrash metal video. That's right. Going to be doing a top 20 plus of some of my favorite albums from the last 22 years. Basically 2000 till now. I did a list not that long ago where I asked all you guys who watched what your favorites were, and I combined all those and I came up with that list, and I'll try and remember to put a link to that one below if you hadn't seen it. And then I was promised that I would do the second part, which were my picks, and that kind of got away from me because I got stupid busy for a long time. So these kind of videos are a little difficult to do because you got to put the list together, you got to pull all the records, so it takes a little bit of time. So I finally got around to doing it. Chances are I probably missed something that I love, but these are the top 20 that came to mind right away, and definitely in my top 5. I didn't forget those because those are definitely some of my top 5 favorite thrash albums. But I'm gonna get right into this mix of old and new. Old bands doing new albums, new bands. But let's start off with an old band, a U.S. band. This is Faith or Fear. They had one album out in the 80s. I think it was 1989. They also were on the Ultimate Revenge 2 soundtrack. And then it kind of disappeared. And then this album came out in 2009, and then finally came out on vinyl, I don't know, about 2-3 years ago. But yeah, I mean, this is Instruments of Death is a fantastic follow-up to their first album, which, like I said, came out way back in 1989 on, I believe it was Combat Records. So if you're into them, keep an eye out for this one because it's definitely worth getting. It's great classic thrash. It really does sound like it could have been the follow-up to their first album. So go ahead and jump on this if you're into that. This happens to be a Night of the Vinyl Dead pressing. 177 of 400 is what my copy is. Next up, a lot of fans don't care for this one, but I love this album. This is Creator, Hordes of Chaos. People seem to like the more polished albums they've done recently, Phantom Antichrist and those kind of albums. But Hordes of Chaos, I just love the rawness of it. The album was recorded live in a studio, basically, kind of like they did all their old albums. So it has that same kind of raw, I'm trying to think of the right word, but just this raw. This is the only thing I can think to say. Sound that I just love, and I like the songs. I think everything about this album is just stellar. Like I said, a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's one of their best. I really enjoy it. One of their best newer albums. Then again, you can't go wrong with any Creator. I mean, I like pretty much their entire catalog, even the stuff they did in the '90s that wasn't really thrash. I dig a lot of that stuff too. So, of course, you're never gonna beat their their '80s albums. Those albums are nostalgic. They're historic, and those, they're just great. But when it comes to the newer stuff, I think this is a great album from them. So this is Hordes of Chaos, Teutonic Thrash from Creator. This is a new band, Freakz, one you don't hear about too often. They have like 4 or 5 albums out now. This album actually features a couple members of Dust Bolt playing along on the album. But I mean, it's very much inspired by the whole, 80s sound. I mean, you definitely hear the Exodus and the Testament and early Metallica and those kind of things, Slayer mixed into this sound. But they also have their own sound, and I don't know. I mean, it's exactly what you want to hear from thrash. It's got those what I call machine gun riffing. It's just the fast, down picking, or sometimes it's up down picking, but a lot of times it's the down picking. It's got just great shout along vocals. It's got everything you want in thrash metal. So to me, this is just a great album. It's called Toxic End. I believe this was their second to last. I can't even remember. It might have been their third album. This one. I'm pretty sure they have like 4 or 5 albums out, and I'm pretty sure I have them all on CD and at least a couple of them on vinyl. So great band, Freakz. Another band that kind of put a few albums out in the late 80s and early 90s and disappeared. They actually only put one full-length out and a great EP, but this is Power Mad, and this is probably 2015, so this thing's probably 6, 7, 8 years old now. But this was their comeback album. Man, this is a great album. Now, no, it does not sound like the early stuff. The early stuff was almost a speed metal sound with those clean, soaring vocals, kind of in the realm of Toxic or Agent Steel and that kind of stuff. This is a little more gruff, a little more raw, a little more edgy, a little more thrash, a little less speed metal, and I really, really enjoyed this album. And if you didn't know they had a new album out, well, it's not new anymore, but a newer album out, this thing is definitely worth picking up. Really nice package. I'm not going to pull the whole thing apart, but it's got you know, this big giant. It's like a gatefold that's die cut, and it's just really cool. Comes with it. Came with a Power Mad Infinite bumper sticker. It's just a fantastic package and great music at that. You know, being that I'm a graphic designer and I work for a lot of record companies and love doing this kind of stuff, packaging is a big part for me in this kind of thing. But so this one's definitely, the music is great, so that's why it's on my list. I mean, you can have great packaging and have crappy music, but not the case here. Infinite from Power Mad. Alright, this one is just from last year. Another great album. This band really never stopped making great music, but I think this is probably one of their finest. This is Floss Majestic, Blood in the Water. Great album. What can I say? It's Flotsam, you know. Eric A.K. sounds as good as he ever has. Everything on here is fantastic. The songs are memorable. You know, one thing I do like about thrash is when a band has, you know, the aggression and the riffing and the speed and all those kind of things, but they also, you know, have hook, and it's not just speed for speed's sake. Well, Floss Majestic know how to write good songs. In my opinion, this is just a fantastic album from them. So well worth picking up if you're into Flotsam. If you've never heard, I've met lots of metal fans who are like, oh yeah, I like the first two albums. I haven't heard anything after that. Why? There's some great stuff out there. And here's one right here, Blood in the Water. So there you go. All right, newer band. This one actually made the first list. Some people voted for it, but it's making my list as well. This is Avengers Blood. This is, I believe this was their third or fourth album. I don't know. Kind of hard to say because they had some demos and all kinds of stuff out there. They got some new material coming out this year as well. But this is Death Brigade. It's just a fantastic album. Very much inspired by the you know, the Creator, Sodom, Destruction, German thrash, but also you get bits of Slayer, and even a hint, and I say a hint because there's not really any death metal in here, but there's a hint of death metal influence here and there, maybe even in the drumming. Shannon Fry is just a fantastic drummer, super nice guy as well, so there's Shannon's skull right there in the back, so great album. Not sure how easy this one is to find these days because it's on a now defunct Heavy Artillery label, so that label's putting out some great stuff, but they didn't last very long. Another one of these reformed bands who came back and probably put out one of their best albums. This is UK thrash metal band Acid Rain. Great cover art, great album. Just, I mean, these guys were kind of always had the joking thing going. You know, they were kind of a, you know, they were like the Frank Zappa of thrash metal, always kind of joking around in the lyrics. And a lot of people didn't like that about them. Everybody wants their thrash metal to be serious and, you know, political or religious or social or whatever, but these guys were kind of always just silly. But on this album, it's just pure thrash, and there's nothing really silly or joking about it. So I like their early stuff, you know, the UK Applecore they call themselves. But this album is just stellar. If you're a thrash fan, even if you don't like those first few albums that Acid Rain did back in the '80s, this is worth checking out. Newer band, not a new band. These guys have been around for quite a while. But this is Repent, another German band. I can't even tell you what album this is, but this was their last studio album that I know of. And this thing came out back in 2019. I remember when this thing came out, I couldn't stop playing it, and it definitely was in my top 5 for that year. So yeah, when I was thinking, okay, what albums do I want to include in my list, this is one of the first ones that came to mind. Great album from a great band, Repent. Jürgen Allman is the vocalist on this album, and he is also a really cool member of the vinyl community on YouTube. So, all right, another old school band showing the new schoolers how to do it right. This is Canadian band Sacrifice. Great album cover, love it. This is the ones I Condemn. I really, really enjoyed this album. To me, it's just an extension of the album, you know, the first 3 albums that he did back in the 80s and early 90s. It's just, you know, the follow-up. Even though there's a huge gap in time, I think that they just did a great job, and I play this one a lot. You know, when it comes to like older bands, like say Metallica, if I want to hear some Metallica, my first choice, I'm usually going for Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, you know, Master of Puppets and that kind of thing. And then maybe if I'm really into it, I'll grab something of the newer ones. But usually if I'm in the mood to hear them, I'm going to go for the old ones. But with a band like Sacrifice, I love those old albums, but I still play this one just as much as the older ones. So really, really awesome album from them. Worth picking up if you're into the Canadian thrash metal legends Sacrifice. staying in the Canadian mode, this is a newer band. This is Rammer. Now, Rammer were around in the late 90s into the 2000s, and this album was, I believe, 2006, so this one barely makes the cut by 6 years, but this is some really heavy stuff. I mean, this is very raw, very intense, not death metal, but it kind of has the intensity of death metal. Vocals aren't, you know, necessarily growled either. They are definitely gruff and intense, but Rammer are just a great band. You need to check them out if you don't know that. Rammer, Canadian band, like I said. This is Cancer. This album is fairly easy to find. Some of their other stuff is harder to find. They've got, you know, several demos out, and some other stuff that's on vinyl was very limited pressing. Some of this stuff, but this one here, I've seen copies fairly inexpensively. So, Rammer, Cancer. All right, a newer band, although it features some older guys from older bands. But anyhow, this is Texas Warbeast. Could have gone with any of their albums, but I went with Enter the Realm because it's just the one I Enter the Arena. Enter the Arena. It's just the album I tend to listen to the most. Oddly enough, I actually have Destroy right here as well. Could have gone with either one of them. Both great. As I recall, this one was produced by Phil Anselmo of Pantera fame, and it was on his Housecore Records label back in 2017. But don't mistake this for Pantera. This is not Pantera. There's not groove. This is thrash. This is aggressive. This is heavy stuff. This is like, you know, this compares to bands like Slayer, early Slayer, you know, where it's just, it is about the speed and intensity and the vibe, and this has all that. I mean, the cover art and the name says it all. It is Warbeast. Great band. So, speaking of war, this next band sings of war quite a bit. This is another German band. This is Sodom Cold Red, and this album barely makes the cut. I believe this is like right at like either 99 or 2000, so I might even be off by one, but I don't care. This is all, I mean, I love Sodom material, but this is my favorite album. I love Cold Red. I don't know why I like it more than some of the other ones. Like Agent Orange seems to be a fan favorite. Everybody loves Agent Orange, and I like Agent Orange too, but Cold Red is just one of my all-time favorites. This album just kills from front to back. I mean, this is a hammer to the brain. So, great album. If you like Sodom and you don't have this one, I'd be shocked if you like Sodom and didn't, but solid album from them. All right, next up, this is a band who put out one album in '89 and 2 albums in the early '90s. They toured with Bolt Thrower and Sacrifice. They kind of disappeared for a while and came back with this reunion album. This is Gabriel. Now, a lot of people say they don't like this album as much as the early stuff. I think this album is fantastic. I think it's, I don't know, I mean, don't get me wrong, Sanity Obscure and Extraction Mortality are definitely my 2 favorite Believer albums, but this one would come in at right number 3 and maybe even tied at number 2. I like it that much. Now, I will admit at the end there's some noodling and goofing around on the album. Like, this is a recent vinyl reissue just from last year, or this year, 2022. So just this year on Bombworks Records. But basically side A, B, and C on this thing, and the first portion of side D are just fantastic thrash metal. Progressive, yes. Technical, very much so. The last few songs are silly, and I believe on the CD some of the stuff was even like hidden tracks. So, but yeah, I mean, they were just goofing around with some of this stuff. But like I said, stuff like Medtone, A Moment in Prime, Stoned, Redshift, History of Decline, The Need for Conflict. It's just great thrash metal. And by the way, the original kind of was thin production. This remaster, man, it brings out the bass, and not just the bass guitar, but the bass tones. Really gives it a better sound, and I'm quite impressed. And by the way, the artist who did this cover is actually the same guy who did the Sacrifice cover I showed earlier. I've got a lot to show, so I'm going as fast as I can here, but some of this stuff is just cool, and I just want to show it. So, where'd I put it at? It's in here somewhere. Come on, where'd you go? There it is. So, same artist. Body painting, really cool. There's some great artwork inside both of these albums. Believer, Gabriel, what I said the year was, I don't remember now, 2009. All right, where are we now? We are new band, originally out of Phoenix, Arizona. This is Vector, I could have gone with any other album. I love Vector. Now, Vector are a band I discovered by seeing live. My band, Ultimatum, was playing a show in Albuquerque, and we were supporting a few bands that were on tour, including Vector was on that tour. And we played, and they played after us, and I was blown away. They were great. I went over to their table. I bought their CDs. I bought a shirt. I bought a patch. I put their patch on the vest that's behind me that I used to wear on stage. Great band. I kind of like to compare them to Corner. I know some people get upset by that because Corner are definitely a unique animal, but they kind of have that vibe. They're definitely inspired by the likes of Voivod, but they got kind of the harsher, almost black metal-ish vocals. I wouldn't call it black and thrash. I just call it, technical or progressive thrash. But yeah, he's got very harsh, almost, like I said, black metal vocals. But this is just a band I love. So this is Outer Isolation by Vector. All right, what's up next here? Another comeback album, a band that disappeared after a while. Juan Garcia and Evil Dead. A lot of this band here are actually also in Anger is Art with Steve Gaines. And anyhow, they recorded this one album, I think it was 2 years ago now, maybe a year ago. Might have been 2020. I think it was 2020. And again, almost like, they never skipped a beat. They weren't together for, well over a decade. Was it more like 15 years? And they just came back with an album that sounds like and looks like it could have just been, the next album in concession. Could have been released back, in 1989. And now I will say the production values are far better than anything 89. But other than that, yeah, this is fantastic stuff. Evil Dead, great band. Highly worth picking up if you don't know this band, and it's a shame this one didn't make the other list because it definitely belongs in a top 20 albums of the last 20 some years in my opinion. All right, next up, we're almost to the top 5. Another German band. This is Iron Angel. This is another band that I love. This is Emerald Eyes. This is one that I've spun so many times I can't even tell you. But kind of pushing the boundaries of power metal a little bit, moving away from thrash or maybe even speed metal. But still, it's a great band and a great album. I really enjoyed it. So this is just a few years old now, maybe 2020, I think. I can't read the type on the back. I think it's either 2019, 2020, somewhere in that area. But great band, Iron Angel and Emerald Eyes. Another one of those bands, older bands, show people how to do it right. These guys, Death Angel. This is The Evil Divide. Awesome album cover, awesome music. Everything about this thing is fantastic. I've seen Death Angel live several times over the last few years touring, and they're just super tight, and they just tear it up. Great band. And anyhow, I'm super happy to have seen them just the other, what was it, maybe 3 weeks ago on the Bay Area Strikes Back tour. They stole the show. They were fantastic. Regardless, great album, Death Angel. I mean, it sounds like classic Death Angel. It's fast, it's furious, it's got hooks, it's got great vocals. Everything, matter of fact, here's my ticket. Everything you want to hear, in thrash metal or from Death Angel, you've got here. There's no, straying into other styles of music. There's no rapping. There's no, you know what I mean? There's nothing odd going on here. It's just great, straightforward thrash metal. All right, we are almost to the top 5. This is Vulture, Metal Blade band, newer band. They've only got 2-3 albums out. I can't remember totally how many, but this is pretty recent album. I cannot read this little itty bitty type down here. But anyhow, I can't remember what year this came out. It wasn't that long ago. But yeah, just great thrash metal, new band. So easy to find because it's on Metal Blade. If you haven't heard Vulture and you're into thrash metal, definitely check them out. It's worth your time. All right, now we're getting into my top 5. And an honorable mention. Let's do the honorable mention right here. I didn't include this one because it's so new. It just came out, and I was listening to it just today. But this is the New Destruction, German thrash metal band, Diabolical. This album is awesome. I'm really digging it. I've played this thing over and over again. I've only had it for a few weeks now. So if you're into Destruction, if you're into thrash metal, the Teutonic thrash style, this is highly worth grabbing. So brand new 2022 release. So all right, let's get into the top 5. All right, number 5. Coming in at number 5. I really struggled with putting these in order because these really are some of my favorite newer thrash albums that I spin so much. All right, number 5. Again, like I said, I really struggled with these. So this is Madrast. And this is their last album, Charring the Rotting Earth, from 2020, I believe it was. Yep. I absolutely, this Tanner Poppets band, this thing is just brilliant. Progressive thrash, again, aggressive vocals. Not, I wouldn't call it death metal, but it does push that extreme sound. But man, they've got melody, they've got hooks, they have just, the musicianship is fantastic. The song "Charring the Rotting Earth," the title track, check that out on YouTube, man. It's just so awesome. Madrast from California, the LA area. These guys are just killing it. They need to be on a bigger label. They need more. They need to be more well known because they are definitely worth. I mean, they're worthy. They're every bit as good as a band like, in my opinion, are every good as a band like Vector or Havoc, or these kind of bands that everybody seems to know, newer bands. Madrast should be right there with them. So this is their 4th full-length album, and I think later this year all their demos and a live album are getting released on CD as well. So regardless, Madrast, Charring the Rotting Earth, coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, Accuser, German band, another one that's been around forever. These guys were around the 80s, put out a bunch of classic albums in the 80s and into the early 90s. 95, they kind of broke up after putting out the album Taken by the Throat. They I don't know if they broke up, but they just went into, I don't know, disappeared. And it came back in 2010 with a new album. So it was 15 years between albums, and then after that album came out, this one followed it up, and wow, this thing is incredible. Now, I really like the other album, too, which, for some reason, the name, I keep wanting to say it's Agitation. It is Agitation. Agitation came out in 2010, so this was probably 2011. It is, and that album was great, but this album, I just think everything, I love everything about this. There's these just wicked leads, great melodic guitar stuff, mixed in with the total aggression. People tend to think that this band is like real extreme metal, death metal. That's not the case. They are definitely fast, furious, heavy, jackhammer to the brain style thrash. But it's not like they're riding the border of death metal. That people wouldn't say, "Oh, that's a death metal band." No, this is thrash metal, and this is really, really good thrash metal. It's actually just came out on vinyl. I literally just got the vinyl. I planned on showing the CD, but I'm showing the vinyl because I just got this in the mail 2 days ago. Already played it all the way through. Sounds great. Love the remastering as well. This one is available at boonsoverstock.com. It's also there's also copies on eBay and I believe Amazon as well if you're interested. So Accuser, Dependent Domination, 2011. Okay, number 3 is a Belgian band. This is After All. Now, this band's been around since the mid-90s. They've got tons of albums out. I have most of them. I really like this band, but for some reason, this one is the one that drew me in. I really didn't know them all that well. I knew of them when this album came out, but I ended up buying this album mostly just for the fact that it had an Ed Replica cover, and I was curious. So I bought the CD, and my gosh, I played that thing to death. And this is back in 2012, so this is almost 10 years ago. And after I found this album, I started looking for all their back catalog, and now I have all their back catalog. But there's definitely a difference in the sound of this album than some of their back catalog. They had different vocalists in those albums. They were a little more, I'm going to say, gruff. On the older ones, this is more speed metal. This I would put up there with like bands like Agent Steel and Realm and Toxic, and it's got the speed and the energy of thrash. It's got the the fast down picking. It's got the the double bass. It's got everything you want in thrash metal, but it's also got these high, clean, soaring vocals. Like John Cyrus did in Agent Steel. So if you're into that style of thrash with those clean, soaring vocals, you're kind of probably dig After All. This album is definitely worth picking up. One of my all-time favorites, obviously coming in at number 3 in my favorites of the last 20-some years. And number 2, another new band. This is Havoc, coming out of Colorado, Denver. This was their 2nd album. You really could have picked any of their albums. I love this band. Another band that Now, this band I actually knew before I played a show with them, but after I played a show with them, I fell in love with them because they were so awesome. They're also really super nice guys. So my band opened up for them a show when they were touring through. Nice guys. We helped them carry their equipment on stage and off the stage afterwards, and really enjoyed their sound. Their first album is great, and man, I can't tell you how many cardio exercises that first album got me through. But then this album came out, and this has just been my longtime favorite. And the song "Time Is Up" and "Prepare for Attack" and "Fatal Intervention" and just pretty much the whole thing. But if you need a little pick me up while you're doing some cardio in the gym or something like that, man, this album will do it for you. It's just that good. Some people compare them to Testament. Yeah, maybe. I think they're a little more aggressive than Testament, but regardless, I think they have their own sound. But yeah, they're definitely influenced by that, that Bay Area sound, like a lot of bands are. I don't think that's a bad thing. Some people would say, oh, it's not, they're not doing anything new. So what? A great jazz musician plays jazz, right? A great blues musician plays blues. A great thrash metal artist plays thrash, and Havoc are a great thrash metal artist. So coming in number 2, this is Time Is Up by Havoc. All right, and then my number 1, and gosh, I really struggled with what I wanted to put at number 1, but this album is definitely going to be in my number 5. My top 5, because I played this thing so much over the years. It's ridiculous. I've got several copies of it on vinyl and CD and everything else, but this is the resurrected Hyrax, obviously Kate DePena's band, and I love the old Hyrax stuff. It kind of, the 80s stuff was very much a crossover thrash sound, but then they came back after disappearing for a while. They ended up getting Glenn Rogers in the band, and Dave Watson was the 2 guitar players who played on this. Now, Glenn Rogers wrote a lot of material on here, and Glenn had previously been in bands like Vengeance Rising, and he was in Steel Vengeance, and he was in, gosh, he was in a bunch of different bands. He actually wrote a couple songs with Deliverance. He also went on to play with Heretic, and anyhow, Glenn's been around for a while, and he wrote a lot of this stuff, and this album just blew me away. I love everything about it, from Caton's high pitched, intense yelling to Glenn's, thrash metal riffing, to the guitar solos, even the dirty, nasty bass by Angelo Espino. Angelo had previously been in Reverend, David Wayne's Reverend. He since has joined Heretic, and he also plays pretty regularly with Betsy Bitch. So, anyhow, great band. Pretty much, definitely an underground superstar, but a superstar lineup going on here. And then George Icabelis, I believe how you say his last name. He's actually playing in Primal with Glenn Rogers in their new band. They're recording a new album this year. So, but anyhow, great album. Everything about this thing. There is one old song that they re-recorded on here. Which one was it? Let's see if I can remember. A New Age of Terror, Hostile Territories. This thing's so great. Oh, El Diablo. Nope, that's not it. Which one was it? El Diablo Negro? Yeah. So that was actually an EP that they had done, and they re-recorded it here. But everything else, I believe, Glenn Rogers wrote almost everything on here. All the riffs, all the the songs. Of course, Caton wrote the lyrics, but and did all the vocal melodies. But such a great album. If you like thrash metal, classic LA thrash metal, this is so worth picking up. This is actually a copy on Mausoleum, on TPL Records, licensed from Mausoleum, but you can get this thing on Black Devil Records in the United States, and there's copies of that floating around. Cover's slightly different on that version, but regardless, Caton's own, you can get it from Caton's website as well. I'm sure he's probably on Bandcamp as well. So anyhow, number 1, Hyrax, New Age of Terror. One of the greatest thrash albums of all time, in my opinion, and that's saying a lot. So there you go. That is some of my favorites. The thrash albums from the last 22 years, 2000 till now. I didn't really put anything in there new. I did show that, the Testament real quick, but, excuse me, I did show the Destruction real quick. I could have actually picked some of the Testament stuff. There's just so much good thrash that's come out in the last 20 years. It's ridiculous. I mean, I actually had a hard time keeping it down, which I obviously didn't since I had more than 20. But anyhow, that's it. I'm going to stop yammering. Appreciate y'all watching. God bless. Stay strong.